We've got a food plot in front of me here that droughted out during the summer. It was just such a dry summer, and this is up on a ridge. Those types of spots usually don't do very well during a dry year. So we're going to go in there, get a soil test, talk about this whole process, why it's important, how to do it, and then we'll keep moving from there. So this is the food plot I'm going to be working on today. It's about an acre in size, and you can see it's up on a ridge. Like I said, it was really susceptible to the dry conditions that we had this past summer. So we're going to come back and get a soil test here, figure out exactly where we're at, because we want to make sure that whatever we plant in here, that we've got the perfect soil composition for that plant so it can thrive. You know, plants are living organisms. You got to feed them in the same way that you have to feed a person or a mammal of any kind, or any kind of animal or fish. You've got to feed these food plots the correct amount of nutrients. So first step is trying to figure out exactly where do I want to get my soil test from. I'm only going to send in one sample from this food plot. So I don't want to do it in one spot, because you could hit a spot where whatever the conditions might have been, you know, maybe that area has more fertility than another part of the plot. So I like to average it over 2 or 3 locations within the entire length of the food plot. So I'm going to grab a little bit out in front of me, about 20 yards away, and then go up over the top of that hump and grab another sample off the back, mix them together, and that's what I'm going to send in. There's a couple different ways you can get your soil tests done. This is a kit that you can buy right straight from Frigid Forage. So if you go on the website, you can find the link and you can purchase the soil test kit. It comes with everything you need, the mailing envelope, all prepaid, the little folder, a little envelope, or whatever you call it, pouch that you put the dirt sample in, and a lot of instructions on how to actually get the soil test and then how to interpret the test once you get it back. So this is a good product right here. It's not real expensive. It's real handy, something that you can do really quickly at home. The other option is you can go to the local co-op if you're in an agricultural area, and they'll typically do soil tests for you. You just bring in your samples, number them, or put names on them or whatever, and they'll send them in and they'll get the analysis done. And then when the analysis comes back, they can help you to interpret what it is that you need to add to the soil. So I'm going to get a couple of samples of the dirt in this little pouch and mix them together, and then I'll get this sent in. This is my second location. It's clear on the other end of the food plot from the first spot, and I'm just going to, like I said, get 2 different spots here, mix the dirt together, and that gives me a more of an average analysis for this entire food plot. One other thing that I want to talk about, since I'm in this little small wooded food plot, is the effect that leaves have on the soil. And this one's got a lot of small leaves on it. I've seen food plots before. If you look at it, it's in some spots it's completely covered with these little leaves, but I've seen food plots before where the leaves have drifted in, or they've settled in there where it's almost an inch deep of just leaves, especially in certain corners of it or whatever. And normally this is going to give you pretty decent P and K levels in your soils in these areas, but the leaves themselves tend to make the soil more acidic. So we'll talk a little bit about the pH level of the soil and why that's important. But it's one thing that you fight all the time in these little food plots. I'm guessing that when my results come back on the soil test, they're going to call for putting quite a bit of lime in this area. And that's the main reason why, is because over the years there's been a lot of leaves in here, and that makes the soil more acidic. The pH level of the soil really determines how easily the plants can uptake the nutrients that are in the soil. You want to try to be in that neighborhood of about 6.5 to 7 for most of the things that you grow. And I'm going to guess just off the top of my head that this is going to come in at 6 or under 6 on pH, which means it's acidic, which means that anything that we plant here is not going to do real well, regardless of how much fertilizer that we put on it, because the plants just aren't going to be able to uptake that fertilizer that well because of the acidity of the soil. So that's why that's important. And there's a couple of different ways that you can treat that. You can either use ag lime, which is just ground up limestone basically, and that does some other things to the soil too. It adds calcium and magnesium, which the plants also can utilize, but the main thing it does is it brings that pH level up. It sweetens the soil, if you want to call it that. And it takes a little bit of time, because this is basically a rock that has to disperse itself into the soil and kind of temper the acidity. So the other option is to use what's a little bit quicker approach but not as long lasting, and that's the pelletized lime. And this is something that's highly dissolvable. It works into the soil very quickly. and it's typically effective for about 1 year. That's what we'll be doing on this farm. I didn't get a chance to get out and get the ag lime on during the winter, which is the best time to do that. So when we put our fertilizer on, we're going to put on whatever pelletized lime that this soil test calls for. So I just wanted to bring you up to speed on pH. We've got really two different things that we're trying to control: the fertility of the soil and then the pH level, or the acidity of the soil. So that's the other half of the equation. I'm back at the location where I'm planting this food plot where I took the soil test, and I've got the results of the soil test in hand. I sent in the prepaid test kit from Frigid Forage and got my results back. You know, different types of plantings require different pH levels, and you specify what you're going to plant when you send the soil test in. So it's going to tell you what you need to do to the soil to bring it to the correct pH for what you've got planned there. And I was putting in clover, and I'm in at a 6.0 pH, and I figured this was going to be low, which means acidic. And a lot of these little food plots back in the timber are going to be acidic because of all the leaves that have been sitting on the ground and rotting over the years. Real typical. This one, it calls for 2 tons per acre of 60-69 lime. The other number on here that's important, there's 3 numbers: your N, P, and K. You know, that's your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium levels in the soil, and those are the primary nutrients that you're trying to control. And putting clover in here, which is what I'm planning, you don't need additional nitrogen, but you do need the P and the K. It shows that my phosphorus is low and my potassium is near optimal, but they still call for putting on 80 pounds per acre of the P and 240 pounds per acre of the K. So it's all right here on the soil test report. And you just carry this with you when you go into the co-op, wherever you're buying your fertilizer or getting your lime contracted to apply. If you don't have a co-op in your area, you're going to have to go to a lawn and garden store or someplace like that, and it's going to get a little bit tougher. It's going to be a little bit longer process before you arrive at the exact blends or the exact mix of the products that they've got on hand that you need to apply.